Put your head up, play!
Živijo, lep pozdrav vsem, jaz sem Matej, tokrat smo pa za vas pripravili malce drugačen podcast in sicer pogovor s Kirkom Hendersonom, glavnim urednikom največjega portala namenjenega navijačem Dallas Mavericksov, Najbolj, ki ga verjetno mnogi izmed vas že poznate. Kirk ima tudi popularen podcast in je zelo popularen na Twitterju ter tudi brez dlake na jeziku, zato mislim, da bo pogovor vreden vašega časa in poslušanja. Če bo temu tako, vas seveda, tako kot vedno, prosim za všeček in pa tisto, kar je še bolj pomembno, naročnino na naš YouTube Sport Info kanal. Če kliknete potem zraven še tisti zvonček, vas bo ta obvestil o vseh novih podcastih in ostalih vsebinah na našem YouTube kanalu. Če pa podcaste poslušate na kakšnih drugih platformah, iTunesih, Spotifyju, Soundcloudu, dosegljivi smo na vseh večjih podcast platformah in tudi tam se lahko naročite, nas všečkate, pustite kakšen komentar ali recimo na iTunesih oceno in tam bomo zelo hvaležni, če nam stisnete, če smo tega vredni, seveda najvišjo možno oceno 5 zvezdic. Danes smo objavili tudi analizo zadnjega prestopnega roka, reakcije, pričakovanja, ocene, zmagovalci, poraženci tega zadnjega prestopnega roka. Povezavo lahko najdete na koncu tega posnetka. V torek po zaključenem prvem delu, prvih 3 tekmah kvalifikacij za svetovno prvenstvo, pa tudi po tekmi s Ciprom, analiza tega uvodnega dela, tako da ker naročite se na naš kanal, pa boste obveščeni o vseh novih vsebinah. Zdaj pa, da ne bom zgubljal časa, debata s Kirkom, ki sem jo napovedal, en tak pregled dogajanja v Dallasu to sezono in pogled v prihodnost, kako dolgo bo Luka še trpel poraze oziroma sezone, v katerih ne bo nič osvojil. Tudi o tem sva nekaj rekla s Kirkom, tako da kar gremo veselo na delo. I'm joined today by Kirk Henderson, the senior editor at Mavs Moneyball, the SB Nation site. He's also a great follow on Twitter. You can find him at Kirk Serious Face. And of course, Mavs Moneyball podcasts, After Dark podcasts, Post-Game podcasts, and Kirk Your Enthusiasm podcasts. You can find all of them on the Mavs Moneyball feed pretty much everywhere where you listen to your podcasts, I think, Kirk.
Yeah, I'm way too online. That's correct. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. The last time we talked was almost exactly a year ago, a little more than a year ago, right before the global COVID outbreak. So a lot has changed since then, of course, not just in basketball, but everywhere. We do have a lot to talk about, but let's just start with the trade deadline. Some teams in the West got better. Nuggets, Trailblazers, they made some interesting moves which made them better. Mavericks traded for J.J. Redick and got Nicolo Melli with him as well. He probably won't play a lot, but J.J. Redick might be substantial rotational piece for them. I was just looking at some stats right before we started this pod, and his catch and shoot stats are still great. And I noticed he's shooting over 47% on wide open threes this season. And those are 2 areas where Mavs need help. So I just like to start with your reaction to those Mavs trades and maybe also generally the situation in the West after the trades that have been made. Big question, I know.
No, it's good. It's good. So overall, the West did get significantly better. Teams like the Nuggets, who are above the Mavericks, and I'm really kind of interested in whether the Blazers actually got better or whether they swapped out one kind of scoring guard for another in Norm Powell. The Nuggets are definitely better, but I don't know if the Mavericks have to play the Nuggets anymore this season. You know, Aaron Gordon's probably one of the few big defenders who can actually give Luka problems, but I tend to think that despite the Nuggets probably being a better team than the Mavericks, something about that matchup just really wants me to favor Dallas. The Lakers kind of stood pat, which I found very interesting, and that they must be either very confident in whether LeBron and AD can come back healthy, or if they don't want to sacrifice too much future stuff just to sort of hang on. The Clippers are a conundrum. And so, a lot of Mavs observers and really Luka fans are probably wondering why the Mavericks didn't do something more substantial. And the short answer past, going to get JJ Redick is they really just didn't have the assets. When you trade 2 future firsts for Porzingis, that's sort of the team until they can at least move on from the 2021 pick. Because I wasn't particularly enthused. I think Aaron Gordon would have worked really well with the Mavericks, but giving up a 2025 and a 2027 first round pick for him seems like a huge ask. And if that doesn't work, then you're essentially signing over your fate. And then Luka's going to, if the Mavericks don't work out, then they don't have any flexibility. And then that could potentially lead to Luka demanding for a trade in the 2024 season. I don't know, but it's long enough out to where it would really hamstring future building processes. With the way the NBA works these days, it's always figuring out if you're a step ahead or a step behind the market. And with the play-in tournament for the 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds, that adds essentially 2 more players to the playoff, or 2 more teams in each conference to the playoffs, which can take teams out of the selling process of when it's time to to essentially pack in the season and then try to figure out your draft position. I know that the concept of the way the NBA does the playoffs is probably abhorrent to European soccer fans, but it's just the way that the things are structured, or European football fans. My goodness, know your audience, Kirk. Yeah. and it's very difficult to. And the Mavericks sort of got caught. I don't want to say they got caught, but they moved Justin Jackson and DeLon Wright around for James Johnson, and James Johnson didn't work. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't the worst. And so it's just trading out for JJ Redick is at worst a sort of thing where, if he doesn't play at all, then it doesn't change what the Mavericks were already doing, because it's not like Johnson was playing at all. But if he can give you 15 minutes here and there, if he can, the catch and shoot threes that you brought up is probably something we could talk about for half a podcast, because the Mavericks are terrible at them, and they're largely terrible at them because of Dorian Finney-Smith and Kristaps Porzingis being unable to hit them. But it's if he can just help even around the margins, if he scores, 4.5 points a game, that's something. And buying minutes for the starters, because they've been playing, kind of an 8-man rotation for almost 2 months. And with the frequency of these games, after the All-Star break, there were going to be 38 games in 68 days. That's a lot. So anything to sort of take the load off, I'm looking forward to seeing. And plus, it's just, Redick is such a smart off-ball mover. He's really maximized his career. And even though he's not really that good anymore, the ability to shoot doesn't go away, and the instincts don't go away. And so the Mavericks could just be really frightening on offense at times with let's just say, a small ball lineup of Luka, Porzingis, Maxi Kleber, Tim Hardaway, and Redick. That's a lineup that can shoot.
That's a great shooting lineup, and Mavs, probably most of us didn't expect him to be that poor of a shooting team before this season started. The Seth Curry for Josh Richardson trade, they lost a little bit of shooting with that, and Redick seems like an interesting addition which could help, but probably just on the margins. It's not going to change anything substantially. I was just wondering, before we focus on Mavs and the Western Conference, also your thoughts about the Vucevic trade, the trade Bulls made for him. What do you think that changes for them, if anything?
I really love the trade for the Bulls. I think that, in hindsight, maybe Vucevic might have been better for the Mavericks than Porzingis, because Vucevic is just such an impressive all-around player. I didn't
that's a
realize.
topic I wanted to bring out as well. That's why I mentioned this trade. Vucevic versus Porzingis, who would have been better for the Mavs? And we had a lot of those discussions, at least Slovenian fans did in the past few days. And it was like 99% for Vucevic in almost every aspect. This season, unfortunately, even on defense.
And to answer your first question about the Bulls, I think it makes them really fun. They knew they weren't necessarily going to go anywhere maybe this year, but now they're kind of one of those teams in the back end of the East that can make some noise and just score all the points. They're an incredible offensive team. Like Zach LaVine has become one of these players who is just really playing above what I ever would have thought possible for him. And so it's very interesting to see just what they could do in kind of a weaker back half of the Eastern Conference. I think it's very exciting for them. You know, I didn't understand this until yesterday, but Vucevic has never played with another All-Star ever.
No, never.
That's nuts. So, you know, what happens if he actually has some decent teammates? It's going to be really pretty exciting for fans of his to watch and see where he goes. Do you want to talk about like the Porzingis like thing now, or do we want to circle back to that?
Yeah, we can actually start that now, and we'll do other topics along, because the Porzingis versus Vucevic. Yeah, you would probably rather have Vucevic as well. Let's just start here.
The ceiling on Porzingis is higher because of what he can do on defense, but the NBA season is too long for this sort of stuff, where I want the player who's available. And the Mavericks, you know, they need more than they're getting from Porzingis. And I'm probably talking to a friendly audience for this, but a lot of American Mavs fans get very pissed with me when I say this. But I feel for Porzingis because he's never finished the year healthy, ever. He has never finished a single season in his 6 years healthy. So at what point does that become the norm? To me, it is the norm. But, you know, the way as sports fans, we're also hopeful about what's coming. And, you know, we're hopeful based off of the best aspects of what we see. Like the game that stands out last year was the Mexico City game where Luka and Porzingis just tore Detroit apart. But honestly, that's the upside. There has to be a happy median where Porzingis can look better without Luka having to lift so much of the load. Or kind of handle Porzingis offensively with kid gloves. And so, you know, I guess if we could, you know, go in a time machine, you know, and if both players were available, Vooch would make a little more sense. But I still understand why the Mavericks went with Porzingis. I mean, he's a top tier talent when he's playing well on both sides of the ball.
It's a no-brainer trade, the trade they made for KP.
Yeah.
You mentioned friendly audience. A lot of Slovenian basketball fans who maybe don't watch a lot of NBA actually see Porzingis as a great player and have good memories, like the 2017 Eurobasket where he played against Luka. He was one of the top three. He was just as good as Luka and Goran Dragic, who was an all-star the season after that. Maybe even better. Maybe arguably even better than then. Just the Latvian team got eliminated by Slovenian because they were deeper. That was that. But he was brilliant. He was an all-star the season after that. And that was probably that, and maybe a little bit of bubble KP in the second part of last season was the absolute peak KP that we saw so far. But health is a big issue with him. But I wonder, maybe there are also some chemistry issues on the team. How do you think he actually fits with Luka, chemistry-wise, game style-wise, the spacing he brings, the gravity he has? We know it has a big effect on Luka's drives. But, I mean, just because we were talking about Vucevic, for the past 3 seasons, has been a much better shooter than KP and arguably a better floor spacer. And now you have a lot of bigs that can shoot threes, not a lot of bigs like KP. But that's not such a unique skill set anymore. So, like the chemistry, playstyle issues, his desire for post-ups, where he's, not that effective, to be honest. How do you think he fits game-wise, playstyle-wise, and chemistry-wise with Luka?
So with what the Mavericks want to do, he is an ideal fit because he does stretch the floor. He does possess all of the myriad of skills. He can put the ball on the floor and get to the rim. I'm sure anyone who follows me on Twitter sees my frustration about how he only drives left as a right-handed player. Drives me insane. But he's just so skilled that on the offensive side of the ball, he fits with what the Maverick scheme is. Where they run into problems is his ego is still very much in play here. He's not been in the league long enough. He's not failed long enough and really understood where his real position is. I had wondered before the first season of the two of them playing together if there were going to be some sort of ego-related things based off of how they wanted to play and some clashing. But Luka was so much better than KP last year, it ultimately didn't matter. This year, there's a lot of you can see it on the court. Porzingis is being more emotional. And frankly, I like the emotion if it would translate into some better play. But he's not playing the same way. He's essentially playing like late career Carmelo Anthony, which is who he was under with the Knicks when he got there, where style seems to matter a lot more than substance to him. And that's very, very frustrating because he is a very good basketball player, make no mistake. But what he wants to do is at odds with what the Mavericks need to do. He's actually passing pretty well out of the post-up. I don't mind them. What I don't like is when they continue to feed him when it's not working. You know, it should be fine. You go to him 2 to 3 times, and if they go down and they gets rolling, great. If he's missing on these short 10-footers where he turns around, they have to do something else. The real underlying thing that should kind of concern Mavericks fans on offense is his lack of attack. And if you check out his free throw attempts and then in the more advanced stats, his free throw rate, he is at career lows this year. He's shooting just 3.2 attempts per game, which is pretty bad. And then his free throw rate, I'm trying to remember how you calculate free throw rate, but it's free throw rate, or where do we go here? A number of free throw attempts per field goal attempt. So he's shooting a ton of field goals and not getting to the line relative to the number of those field goals. Yeah. Like it's my favorite free throw rate of all time. Charles Barkley in like '86 had a free throw rate of 72%. So for 72 out of 72, he shot 72 free throws for every 100 field goals. That is insane. Where Porzingis right now is at 20. He is just he's 10% lower than he's ever been. And that's something that I'm sure really frustrates him. But he's the one that chooses to play the jump shot style game because he won't go right. He on post-ups, he insists on fading. There was a real cool dunk versus the Nets where he went baseline over James Harden and just dunked the crap out of it. That had me really excited. And I just don't understand why he doesn't do that more. I'm wondering if it's still some like mental residual from his injury because, you know, he's had 14 lower body injuries that have made him miss time. So it's tough to just circle back to answer your question. He fits, but I am concerned about whether what it takes to keep KP happy is at odds with what it takes for the Mavericks to succeed.
KP's been noticeably, those numbers, the free throw rates sort of confirm what we can see. He's been noticeably less aggressive attacking the rim in pick and roll or off cuts. When he does like cuts baseline or whatever from whatever position, everybody on Mavs Twitter gets excited because he doesn't do it that often. And when he does it, it looks great. I mean, that adds another dimension to Mavs offense, and Mavs really need that. But I was wondering, what do you think his ideal long-term position is on the team? Does he need a center, a big next to him? What kind of a big? And, well, what is his ideal position? Because one of the things I always like to point out is Mavs last season had a historically efficient offense, but they had the most efficient offense, the highest offensive rating in the first part of the season when Mavs were starting pre-injury Powell, who was an absolutely excellent roll man, great timing on screens, rolls, and very athletic at finishing at the rim. Unfortunately, the injury took that away from him. He's nowhere near that player. But that's when Mavs had the absolutely highest offensive rating with Powell at 5, rolling, and KP popping for 3. The simultaneous danger of 2 players, one of them rolling, one of them popping. Defenses absolutely didn't know what to do with that. So do Mavs need Powell-type roll man next to KP, who's possibly better on defense too? And is that a player they should invest in free agency? Big question.
This is tough. This is real tough because I think when Porzingis is healthy, he's actually the ideal 5 because he rebounds better. He offensive rebounds very well when he's really into it, and he can guard the rim. But he's just, we've seen enough, even outside of kind of the catastrophic injuries. He's dinged up enough to where I think they need at least some assistance for him. I really like him as a role man as well, but he seems very tentative about that unless he's coming from the baseline. I don't understand the stuff down the middle, why he won't just do almost like, elementary level pick and roll from the top of the key. He just doesn't do it. He pops every time. Yep. I think they need a vertical threat who can catch passes, and those who have watched the games know what I mean, where it took Willie Cauley-Stein like 30 games to figure out that Luka was going to place the ball exactly where he needed to dunk it. It was amazing how many missed dunks Willie Cauley-Stein had. So I really do think that they need to find someone who is versatile enough to give them something else on the roll. Maxi Kleber has filled in admirably in that spot, but he's aging. His vertical leap is it used to be outstanding, and he's 30 years old. He doesn't have what he once had. He's going to be a functional player for a real long time. But that's just something that sort of has hung out and has me kind of concerned about what they need to be shopping for. But it's this sort of big man, like I'm very into, this is just sort of my current addiction, is I would like the Kings center Rashawn Holmes, because I think he can guard 4s. I think he's switchable. I think he's smart on the roll. I think he's the kind of guy that can body and get some rebounds, because none of the Mavericks box out. It just floors me how often all of them stare. It's, that's kind of what I'm thinking. If they're not going to, the larger question, and this is just going to hang out, everybody says, oh, they're never going to trade KP. I don't believe that for a minute. The only player on this roster who is untradeable is Luke Dončić.
So far, yeah.
So far. And that's probably going to be the case. As a longtime Mavericks fan, the Mavericks secured, there were 3 main sections of Dirk Nowitzki's career, where there were the 99 to 2004 teams, where they also had Steve Nash and a player by the name of Michael Finley, who all those guys played billions of minutes. It's fun to look at the box scores from the early 2000s, where each of them averaged like 41 to 43 minutes a game. It was wild. And then after they moved on from Nash, it was very Dirk-centric. Jason Terry was kind of the only consistent guy, and then everybody else got rotated in. And so Luka's going to be this guy where they rotate people in and out and figure out how to make things work. The real challenge for Dallas is to not get too married to any one player. So like Dwight Powell's a very good example. They overpaid Dwight Powell. Dwight Powell functioned so well when he was athletically at his peak, but he's, that Achilles injury has effectively changed his career. He might get some of his bounce back next year, but he's only 14 months off of the injury. So it's kind of crazy that the Mavericks were even really playing him at all. And so they have to find something vertical. That's really what's been missing, we still get a few of them, but Luka, for the first 20 games of the year in 2019, 2020, was getting to the rim with such ease, because every time he got picked up or squeezed kind of at the 10 to 12 foot mark on the pick and roll, all he did was throw it high for Powell, and Powell dunked it. The fact that
Luka points every game, pretty much.
Yeah, well, and that Luka's numbers are so similar to last year while playing very differently is super impressive to me. And I know we're still talking about Porzingis and that sort of thing, but it's just something that I'm thinking about. So I think they have to find something. The real challenge is to not overspend in certain areas because as we know, the after this offseason, Luke Dončić will be eligible for a contract extension that takes up 30% of the Dallas Mavericks salary cap. 30% is a lot. 30% is what basically everyone other than Giannis Antetokounmpo makes. It's pretty crazy. It makes it very, I don't want to say impossible, but you're limited on team building. So I think if they go find somebody in the offseason, it's going to have to be a reasonably priced contract player.
Yeah, that's going to kick in the year after that, but he's definitely probably going to sign it this summer. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. Some Slovenian fans I see on different message boards and on Twitter are speculating that he might pass on signing that extension, but I always reassure them that will never happen. Pass in case Mavs don't do as well, because it is true. That's a big factor that shouldn't be a sort of neglected. Luka won from the age of 13 on pretty much every season. He won something. And not winning for like 3 years now is gotta wear on a guy that is just used to winning at every level, everything that is possible to win at that level. So
the difference is, though, and this is, I'm assuming, and I don't know much about Luka's, like I know stuff about his background, but I don't know much about his family and his father. But assuming that his father was a professional basketball player, he never went without. He was it's not like he came from a super poor background or anything. But the kind of money that we're talking about here is generational money.
Yeah,
like 9 figures is crazy. I can't even imagine 7 figures. And so it's
no one listening probably can.
I mean, we're talking about an extension that's going to be worth, like, if the salary cap continues to grow, or it may not because of the COVID stuff, but the extension alone is probably like $200 million. It is nuts. Anyways, that's really in the weeds, but I think that where that kind of conversation comes from is what you had mentioned, that he wants to win, and winning drives all of it. I've long been concerned that by going in for Porzingis the way Mavericks did, it moved up the timetable and expectations too soon. Because when you get a guy like Porzingis, the Mavericks' margin for error, the acceptability of how the team is doing, really closed to where I think last year, as say they didn't have Porzingis, the goal might have been to make the playoffs, period. Yeah. And instead, not only did they just make the playoffs as the 7th seed, it was a rough road. And now a lot of that was due to injuries and the fact that the world blew up. But it's I'm sure he's probably a patient and a loyal guy, I'm guessing, but that only goes so far. And the Mavericks have to continue. They cannot settle. And the last 2 off seasons have been bad. They have been bad. And that has affected the way the team has not moved forward in the way that they wanted to. I think we talked about this the last time I was on this. But then they had a whole other off season. And so the team has sustained because Luka is excellent, not because the Mavericks organization did more to build up around him. Like, that much I'm clear on. Like, I love Luke Dončić, and I get very pissy whenever I talk with people who constantly make excuses for the front office.
Yeah, when you have a arguably top 5 player on your roster, you're on the clock. How much time are you going to need till you build a championship type roster, a true contender around him? And Mavs have known they have a top 5 player for almost 2 seasons now, 2 free agencies, 2 trade deadlines, probably maybe not after his rookie season right away, but they probably had an inkling after his rookie season already. So all the moves they they made after that, you said you don't want to see the Mavs get locked in anything long term, but sort of you have to weigh that against building a potential contender and going all in at some point. Mavs, we know they wanted to go all in with Giannis. Giannis was a long-time dream. I never really thought it's
a poor
real
gamble.
possibility.
I think it was a terrible
poor gamble. Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, Giannis's background is a bit different. He came from second Greek league to the NBA. He never experienced success in Europe pre-NBA. And Milwaukee, the Bucks, really actually helped him a lot with becoming who he is today. They didn't invest probably in second Greek league, I imagine, a lot in his development. So I can see Giannis having a lot bigger sense of loyalty compared to Luka, who I think actually sees Real Madrid as sort of his team. And if he ever plays in Europe at the end of his career, I don't think that's a possibility. But the Spanish fans are dreaming about that. Real Madrid fans, that last year he would return to Real Madrid. In Europe, he wouldn't play for any other team. In NBA, I mean, I think it comes down, like you said, and also pointed out on Twitter a lot, it comes down to winning. With him, I think long term, it just comes down to winning, and Mavs have 4, 5, maybe 6 years probably now to win a chip, to win a championship. So the question is how they'll get there. The next free agency is going to be crucial, I think, here. Your opinion, actually, what they should do in next free agency and how they should move. Richaun Holmes, by the way, was also on my wish list for this trade deadline. That's a move that would bring that vertical spacing that Carlisle always employed in his offense, but that's a smaller move. Who should they invest in next free agency? How should they proceed? And how would you qualify success? What would be a successful free agency for you?
This is really tough for me because I'm so used to being let down by the free agency aspect of Dallas basketball for almost like 10 years now. I remember getting very excited about Jose Calderon and Monta Ellis and then Chandler Parsons. So my expectations are weak. I really think that, assuming that the front office does enough money, so to those who are kind of unfamiliar with this, the restricted free agency process in the NBA is very difficult. So in between a player's third and fourth year on their rookie deal, they have the opportunity to offer an extension which that player can accept or decline. If they decline it, that player still stays on the team, and then the following year they enter what's called restricted free agency. And in restricted free agency, you have to, if another team makes an offer, let's use Lonzo Ball as the example. If another team makes the offer to Lonzo Ball for the maximum amount he can be paid based on his terms of service in the league, which would be 4 years, and I want to say that's like $120 million. It's a lot of money. The Pelicans would have to figure out if that's too much money for them, but they have up to 3 days to keep the other team waiting, where the free agency market could dry up. So the Mavericks, or any team that is offering restricted free agents, have to have enough intel to know what the other team's walk-away price is. What I mean by that is, what's too expensive for them to want to pay? Or is there a potential deal where they could do a sign and trade? DeLon Wright was a good example of this as he was coming off of Memphis into Dallas. Dallas did a sign and trade with them. So I'm really, really, at the moment, very concerned about who's available, because I don't love any of the restricted free agents. In my brain, there's a second rounder who just got moved to Miami, Gary Trent Jr., who played for Portland and now plays for Miami. I think he'd be a very solid role-playing fit. The Mavericks, in my opinion, what they have to do is fill out the roster with depth. The third star chasing, there aren't any stars. They need to go get guys to fill in their available space. Maybe re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr., as hard as that is for some people to hear, and just have more than 7.5 guys on the roster. They may have to move Dwight Powell using a future asset. I'm not sure. But what cannot happen is they cannot have 7 to 8 guys who are playing. Look at Denver. Look at LA. Look at even friggin' the Brooklyn Nets. You have to be able to play 10 to 11 guys in the regular season. There are just too many games. So that's kind of my standard for success, just building depth.
Just by the way, Gary Trent got traded to Toronto.
Oh, moved up to Toronto. What's wrong with me? Sorry.
Yeah. It was the Portland, Toronto, but Miami also made a few interesting moves and added depth. Just what you were talking about, depth. So you're not seeing any chances of any sort of bigger moves, maybe a sign and trade possibility. How do you view Collins? He's probably not attainable unless Atlanta would actually want to do a sign and trade. They would probably want something back and Collins an extra year. So how do you see him as potential part of the Mavs roster?
I just don't know if you can invest in both he and Porzingis and 2 guys that really can't get their own shots and paying them that much money. That's a lot of money for 2 front court players who cannot get their own shots. I think he would be amazing with Luka. But at that point, I think you would need to consider like doing a sign and trade with Porzingis if that's actually on the table. So Collins is a guy that I like, but it just comes with a lot of caveats because as much as I really like watching Luka dominate the ball, he leads the league in time of possession in a real way. The Mavericks have to figure out ways for him to not get you. He's just going to get ground to a nub at some point unless he is able to do some things off ball. I mean, I know he wants the ball all the time, but like it's gotten a little ridiculous. So I still think they need a ball handling type.
And do you see any realistic chances of them actually getting a secondary ball handler who could do some of those things you mentioned? We know ideally Bradley Beal would be a perfect, but that's unattainable. That's a dream.
It's when you watch a guy like Aaron Gordon go for 2 first-round picks. Bradley Beal is an All NBA player. Like
like you have to sell the house. First-round picks. Yeah, and Mavs just don't have those first-round picks. But any other names you maybe see as a possibility out there that you would like to see on the Mavs, maybe to make a trade for them or do a sign and trade, free agency, anything?
I mean, the only one that I'm like keeping an eye on is what happens in Los Angeles. I don't think Kawhi Leonard ever leaves the Clippers, but I also think he's aging into a second part of his career where maybe he might be actually happier playing on a team where he could come in and be the occasional superstar. That's in the back of my head, but that seems kind of ridiculous. I'm really terrible at free agency predictions.
Same here. I was just wondering, because you mentioned a possibility, a chance of sign and trade KP for Collins. Is that something you would do, actually? That would still leave Mavs some cap space, probably, if they exchange those contracts pretty much 1-for-1 in a way. But potential playstyle-wise, is that something you would do? Do you see Collins as a better fit with long-term fit with Luka, potentially a front court fit?
So part of this is my inability to see and really what's out there, in that I've just never been good at this part of being a person with strong opinions.
I'm surprised.
It's just because I don't really know who. Years ago, 2 years ago, I really wanted the Mavericks to sign Malcolm Brogdon. I thought Brogdon would be the ideal backcourt mate for Luka because he's big enough and he can shoot well. I maybe Richardson becomes that guy. I don't know. That's just sort of where my brain is.
Yeah, so basically internal improvement and adding some depth is what would satisfy you during the summer for the next season. That would be, if Mavs sort of achieve that, that would be enough for you. You'd be satisfied with where Mavs are before the start of next season.
Oh, figuring out where I would be happy about before the start of that's hard.
Happiness is such a metaphysical thing.
It's just I need whatever it takes to where at least heading into the season, it appears as if the Mavericks are not going to make Luka be the only guy responsible for carrying all of the load. And we came into the season assuming that, and really misassuming that Rick Carlisle might play a rookie, might play a bigger, I thought James Johnson was a better basketball player than he was. And I just, some sort of, that Trey Burke might be able to do a little more. Jalen Brunson. Yeah. Jalen Brunson is, and Tim Hardaway to a lesser extent, are the only two players that have really done like exceeded my expectations. Everybody else has been less than, and some of that has to do with COVID. But so it's starting next year, whatever it takes for the Mavericks to feel, if not necessarily more balanced, but just to where, I hate how there are just games where, okay, Luka has to have an absolute superstar night. Otherwise, they're not going to win. And that's
40-point triple-double or Mavs lose, and that's not something you can do against every elite team. I was wondering if we can finish up with your predictions for the season. You also mentioned COVID and the effect that had on the team. Luka sort of predicted that before the start of the season, and he probably just saw what was going on in European basketball, which started the season a month, 2 months earlier than the NBA did. And of course, right from the start, games had to be postponed because of COVID issues. And Luka, of course, could see that probably that's going to be the issue in the NBA as well. And it has been for the Mavs. Probably, arguably, I think they lost the most man minutes.
Yes.
They lead the league, so it's been a huge issue for them, but that's also made the team sort of hard to analyze, hard to sort of see where they actually are. So your predictions for the second part, what sort of playoff run would be sort of a benchmark of success for you, successful season for you?
Well, I would say that in order, the Mavericks ran into the first half of the season, the combination of a difficult schedule, period, based off of how the schedule shook out, paired with the missed COVID games, makes the team really hard to figure out. Now they're playing the easiest schedule the remainder of the way. And that makes it just super challenging to see, figure out how good or how bad they are. Because, for example, tonight, I don't know when this is going to go up, but they play the Pacers, and Luka's going to miss the Pacers game. He's back tightness, whatever that means.
I didn't see that.
That happened right as I've been refreshing my timeline, and of course that's what's happening. And so the Mavericks kind of drive me nuts in this regard, to where I feel like that they're trying to skirt this line between being a good playoff team and then trying to give Luka and Porzingis enough rest, and I don't think they can do both. That's just my strong opinion. So I think where they end up is their main goal has to be finishing 6th seed or higher, because I don't want them to have to play the play-in game or play-in tournament, because if they do that, they can figure out whoever's matched up in the 3 seed, but they also get a period of rest to end the year, because that play-in game will really be like a small tournament between the 4 teams in each conference, and that's going to take 2 or 3 days. And so it's like that 2 or 3 day rest, where if you looked at the Mavericks schedule, they probably don't have 2 days off the rest of the year in a row. So that's got to be their goal. I think it's possible. I think they could get even higher if they really push for it. But something tells me, and this happened last year in the bubble, where Rick Carlisle settled for a certain spot. Like they shouldn't have played the Clippers. They should have played higher. But instead they went 3-5 in the bubble when they should have gone 6-2. And that's just sort of what this team does when they have these younger guys who aren't really committed. I don't want to say they're not committed to winning. They don't know how to win. Like Luka knows how to win. That's essentially what makes him the chief guy on the team, even though he's probably not the most vocal of leaders. When the game is on the line, he understands kind of the stakes and isn't afraid of the moment, whereas the rest of the team, I kind of wonder about that. So to answer your question, 6th seed or higher is going to have to be a bar of success. I don't getting out of the first round still feels like a bonus at this point with the level of depth, which probably isn't what people want to hear. But, the top 4 seeds are supposed to advance because they're the better team by record. So, coming up, if they're a 5 seed and they defeat the 4 seed, that's an upset. So it's the standards are still kind of wonky. At the same time, though, it wouldn't shock me if the Mavericks go on winning. They've won 14 out of their last 19, and we're not really talking about that because the losses that have happened have been awful. So it's like, what happens if they keep winning at like a 60 to 65% clip, which is really hard to do in the NBA? Yeah, they could be a top 4 seed for all I know. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
So wide range, but a first round exit wouldn't be something that you would be extremely disappointed by, depending on the performance of the team, of course.
It has to be performance based. Like when KP went down, the fact that the Mavericks took the Clippers to 6 felt like a real win.
Yeah.
So if they were to, I don't know, let's say they match up against the Nuggets or the Lakers and played a 7-game series and lost, at that point, I'm pretty excited about that because you're going up against teams that are superior in talent, superior in depth, and you take them to the wire. Not much more you can add. I mean, you could hope for a win, but at that point, it's getting a little greedy as a sports fan,
Yeah, Mavs are still not there. They are not an elite team yet. They don't have the depth, the roster to actually contend for the title this year. That's pretty much clear. It's been clear. Although I think most of us expected them, I think you did too, to be better this season. And I heard you talk about that too. So did the Mavs. So did their front office, the leadership, so to speak. They expected Mavs to be better, so that sort of poses a lot of questions for their future, the free agency, and where they should be next season. If we are I agree with you, that would be a sort of successful, couldn't be complaining too much about the first round exit and a good performance against one of the elite teams. But next season, next playoffs, how much do you trust this front office? I know your answer, but just are you hopeful? Do you actually think there need to be some changes in front office to maybe end on this sort of fire?
I mean, do I think that?
Question?
Yeah, but I also have I understand both the history. Like Donnie Nelson's been with the team longer than Mark Cuban has owned the team. He's been a general manager for a very long time. I'm sure European fans are familiar with his sort of, which national team did he coach?
He was Lithuanian national. Lithuanian with Sabonis, the father, and that was a great team. I'm not sure if he was involved with the 92 team already.
He was the coach of the 92 team. I was going to say
they were third. They were third,
and he obviously just has such a pedigree, a historical pedigree, that letting go of him is hard. I suspect that he kind of comes with the Mavericks, like he's part of them at this point. So I just don't know. I mean, I think they do something big this year. I think that there are the Mavericks have made some choices which locked them into a path, and I don't think they wanted to mortgage anything more in the future. So I don't know. I will say that I am optimistic in the main reason because they don't really have any other choice other than to go out and do something big. I don't know what that big thing is, but the aforementioned upcoming contract extension for Luka makes that there is no other option. Because otherwise Luka takes up that cap space. They have to do something. So
they have to do something. We hope they'll do something, and after they hopefully do something, we'll be able to talk more. Hopefully, Kirk, you'll be able to join me again on the podcast. I love talking to you. You have a real depth of knowledge, and you're not shy about expressing your opinions on Twitter or podcasts. And I'm really grateful you've been able to take the time to talk to me again.
Well, when they make the playoffs, let's do this again before the playoffs start.
I'll be glad to bother you, to DM you and ask you for another podcast. Thanks again. And, let's hope we'll be able to enjoy the second part of Mavs season. Last season was more enjoyable than this one. So, I'm really hoping for a good second part of the season too. And I'm sure you do too.
Yep.
Thank you again, Kirk. And hope to talk to you again soon.
Sure thing, man. You have a good day.
You too, Kirk. Upam, da vam je bil pogovor zanimiv, všeč. Če je temu tako, nam lahko to tudi poveste v komentarjih, ali pa če temu ni tako, če bo odziv dober, bomo v naslednjih nekaj tednih zagotovo povabili še kakšnega ameriškega podcasterja, pisca, novinarja, avtorja, morda tudi kakšnega igralca bomo videli, ampak da ne bomo prehitevali korakov, step by step, kot pravijo. Mi pa se kmalu zopet slišimo.